laying the new old floor. So we're at the stage now where we can get this kitchen floor laid over the existing ceramic tiles. And first of all, I'm just going to mark out on the low end for two tiles, two of the square tiles, thickness either side, and the wall varies considerably. So I've tried to pick out the area where it's sticking out the most of the wall and put the two tiles there, and then just run a straight edge across so I can see where I'm going to start the bricks from. And then what will happen is there'll be a border of the tiles, because I haven't got enough bricks to do the entirety in brick. I'd be about a metre and a bit short if my calculations are correct. And so plus you always need a border anyway, just because you're going to be cutting, because it's going in at a 45-degree angle or a herringbone style. You're going to have quite a few cuts, so you need something just to clean up where the cuts are. So there'd be quite a nice contrast between the square tiles and the rectangular bricks. So here's, I've just marked off roughly what I think is going to be the main line, and then obviously I'll make good. The tiles will meet the bricks, and then where there's gaps against the wall either side, I'll just fill that out with a bit of sand, cement, whatever. There's not a lot else you can do really. I don't want to be going down the route of trying to straighten up all the walling prior, just for laying a floor. Considering as well it's a kitchen, so you can have things like kitchen table and chairs and fridges and all sorts of stuff taking the place of some of the floor area. Right, so I've done my first line off the wall at the rear, and now what I'm trying to do is just by eye, eyeing a perpendicular. Perpendicular is something that's going to come off 90 degrees from the first line, so that creates your line to start working your diagonals from your herringbone. And then I'm just seeing how far out. The walls are out quite a bit here. Nothing was put in square in this house, so you can't even sort of take measurements off. There's something like a 8 or 9 centimetre difference in that wall where I've done the cob, the lime hemp, to where this to where my batten is. So there's nothing really you can take off. You're just going to try and get it as square as possible, so that when you're walking in from the outside, or if you're coming in through from the main room into the kitchen, it's going to look just about right. So I tend to do a lot of things by eye. You can buy lasers and all the rest of it and set squares and da-da-da. But the thing with this is these bricks are handmade. So they're not sort of a plumb rectangular size. They're not engineered. So they come in varying sizes and thicknesses, and you have to allow for that. When you're going to be laying, I did hundreds of kilometres of block paving back in the UK back in the day, and obviously that's an engineered brick which is almost exactly the same size throughout. It might be 1 millimetre or 2 millimetre difference, but nothing more than that. These bricks vary in size considerably, so you can see there that's just 2 random bricks picked out, and you can see there's the difference in the overall size and the length of them, and then the thickness also. So all these things you've got to take into consideration when you're going to be laying it. So it's not like it's not like a tile where you can more or less guarantee the thickness is going to be what it is and the size is going to be what it is. So you have to play around a wee bit with it. So these bricks were taken from upstairs from the old loft space, which is now the bedrooms, and they're going to be utilised. And beforehand, it's going to give them a bit of a clean off. So some of them have still got the mortar, the weak mortar on the rear of the bricks. So I'll just go around, give it a quick clean off and a brush off, and then they're ready to rock and roll. And there's something like 10 square meters of block and about 4.5 square meters of tile. And I calculate the kitchen to be It's just shy of 14 square meters. So in theory, everything should work out tickety-boo, but we'll wait and see how we get on. This is it's a strange thing. Just doing things like this. These I've laid brick paving before, the clay brick paving rather than the block paving, and it's quite an interesting concept. A little bit different from this. I've laid the granite sets as well, granite cobbles, you might know them as, and I find it a very pleasurable experience. Putting flooring and stuff down, and that is just so. This is a nice experience for me to be doing this, to be reutilising these bricks which were made, maybe 160, 170 years ago, and they're still good. We lost a few along the way, breakages and that, but it's amazing that you've got these beautiful products that often get covered over. People put modern flooring over the top of it, and it's beautiful. So I'm very, very pleased that I'm able to reuse these materials. Right, so and particularly because I'm not a massive fan of tiled floors. I think they look a bit naff, and this is obviously 1980s, 1990s naff that we're looking at there. I know the French dislike immensely carpets. They can't understand why the Brits put carpet down everywhere. I actually had a client that used to put carpet in his bathroom because he insisted he wanted a nice warm surface to put his feet on. Something I've never done. I've never carpeted a bathroom, but he loved that. We have our pet hates, and the French have their pet hates as well, and they just really dislike carpet. Right, so I've started. So you can see, obviously, the tiling is square, and it's what they call a quart design, which means that all the joints run straight through each other. And this pattern I'm putting in is 45-degree diagonal, or herringbone, or however you want to describe it. Now, as I've said just previously, these bricks are not square. They're not the same size. They're not all the same size. So there will be a little bit of playing around and jiggery-pokery to get them looking something like. Some will have slight gaps, and some will be a little bit tighter, and it's just the way it is. Now, I find the best way of doing this is to run a line more or less straight up. So if we create an area which is something around about 1 meter across, around about 3 foot across, and then go straight up the perpendicular line, and then what I would then do is I would then work left-hand side first perhaps, and then right-hand side other. Rather than just going across the ways like this. I just find if you can't try and stick to the perpendicular, you can play around with the shape afterwards. It won't be sort of like an engineered floor where everything you can run a string line through and everything will match. But this is part and parcel of the charm of these things. I mean, when they were laid upstairs, they were just laid in sort of a brick style, just a straight bond with staggered joints on the second and third courses, and even those ran out a wee bit because the tiles or the bricks weren't the same size, so they had a slight curve to them as you look down a line. So you could drive yourself nuts if you're trying to run each line in dead straight. You put a line down there or a straight edge or whatever, and I think you're working against yourself. I think the best thing with this is just get them in, and it's got this sort of natural warm feel to it, and the fact that it isn't engineered, the fact that it looks like it's handmade, and that's the part and parcel of the charm of this kind of floor and this kind of material. It's a bit like the roof. I really like the roof. I really adore the roof. My Hansel and Gretel roof. It's a mixture of varying size roof tiles, and it's the same thing again where it just screams character at you. So it's the same with this thing here. So you can try and be a perfectionist if you want with this, but I think you really would struggle. You can't cut these bricks when you're trying to position them, because if you cut one, you've almost got to cut every brick. So you better just laying them in. So where they're slightly thinner, you need to then put a wee bit more of a bed underneath it. This I'm using what the French call MAP, mortar adhesive, and it's very good. It'll kind of stick anything to anything practically. It's really good material. Right, so just trying to play around a wee bit with the joints there, but already you can see it's got way more character than the tiled floor underneath it, which is about to disappear into the sands of time. And with that, it's just every so often I need to go back, clean some more bricks up. I'm not a big fan of cleaning everything up right there and then. I'd sooner just do it bit by bit. So I can I can clean some tiles, some bricks up, bring them in, get them laid, go out and get the next batch, clean those up, and so on and so forth. The adhesive gives you a good sort of hour or two before it's set. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit quicker because you put in such a thin bed down. And I'm using a serrated float as you can see, so you can see sort of the wavy lines as you put in, and that's just, it just helps to adhere whatever you're sticking to it if you put it like that, because when you put a little bit of pressure on it, those gaps sort of disappear and they've got that sort of suction effect which holds the underside of the brick. So I've gone off again to get some more bricks cleaned up. This is speeded up. This was around about an hour's worth of work, which I've sped up to save you the effort. But again, sometimes it's a bit like watching paint dry because there's nothing really happening other than because I've disappeared to do something else. So I do apologise about that, but I haven't there's no film crew here detailing what's going on. There's not anybody else here that can do the filming or help the cleanup or whatever. It's all me. It's all Michael that's cracking on with this. So again, you've got the tiles which are slightly thinner and at smaller size, so you end up having to just ease them out a wee bit, so you've not got too big a gap between them. But it is what it is. And some of these were painted sort of a greeny colour. You can't kind of see it here because everything's a bit dusty and dirty. You probably see it on a later one. So at some stage, I'll need to clean this top surface up before it gets sealed. But there's quite a few. There was a good sort of, I don't know, 100 or so that had sort of a green paint painted over them. For whatever reason, I've no idea. But they all started off red, and hopefully they'll all finish red. And the tiles are sort of a red colour as well, so, or tonettes, whatever you want to call them. The tiles are around about 14 centimetres square, just shy of 6 inch square. And these briquettes, I think they're 23 centimetres by 11 centimetres, so around about just shy of 8 inches by 4 inches. Well, like I say, there's quite a few of them that would be smaller than that, because obviously during the firing process and the handmade process and everything else, you've not got an exact size. But it is what it is with that. But that again, that adds to the charm, doesn't it, of what you're looking at. And hopefully when people see the kitchen once it's all finished, the kitchen floor down and that, they'll think, yes, what a lovely surface. The other thing it will also assist me with is where we've had rain, we've had sort of heavy rainfall, and it's rained into, because you've got steps directly outside the back door which lead down to the back door itself. We've had occasions where water's got into the kitchen because it's just actually hammered it down, and that water's worked its way into the kitchen. So obviously bringing the level up by about 3.5 centimetres and then putting a mortar edge just where the tiles finish against the threshold of the door frame, that should help, that should resolve that issue as well. So we shouldn't be getting any more rainfall working its way into the kitchen. So that's another good thing. And the other thing is, if you just look to the left-hand side, you can see the concrete floor, which is the main living area, which was always just 3 or 4 centimetres higher than this kitchen floor. Don't ask me why, but it was. So these bricks are going to bring us up more or less level. Might be a touch higher, but then once I've put the laminate down in the main living space, we should have more or less a nice level running all the way through the house. And then just the downstairs loo, that will remain. You see in the previous video, the concrete is kind of more or less the level as well now of these bricks. So the bricks have taken the place where the bricks are going to be, where the kitchen floor is going to be visible, right up to where the units are going to go in, or the buffets, which I'm going to use as my main kitchen furniture, or the base ones. Then you end up with more or less a level, but I didn't need to break out all the concrete, which is just as well, because there's nothing underneath other than soil. Only 2 inches of concrete, or 5 centimeters of concrete, and then you're straight onto the soil. So I put some lime down there just to make sure that if there's anything organic living in it, it gets killed off. And then going to lay these bricks tight to the concrete and then re-cement around the edges so that the whole thing gets locked in. So hopefully that'll work well. Didn't want to go down the route of digging out the soil and then putting a new concrete base in and then tiling over top of it. I'm fairly certain that the sub base that is there is not going to move. And once these things are all locked in, it'll be as good as for the kitchen. So maybe say he's cutting corners a wee bit, but yes, I am. But there is method to my madness, right? He said before being dragged off. Right. So this is coming along quite nicely, I think. You need to, on the edges, after a while, you need to just clean up the mortar isn't being used for the time being, just so that it doesn't go off, because it's a bugger to clean once it's stuck. It's very difficult to get off. So every so often I go around with the smaller trowels and I just scrape back to the bricks that are in place, and then afterwards you can then re-add the mortar as you're working your way along. But you can see I'm working my way up the perpendicular line there. I'll get almost up to where the kitchen door is, and the door's just flung open there. And then with that, then I'll work one side and I'll work the other, and that way there, and you can kind of keep the bond as is, and just ensuring there that the door will open and shut after cutting it down with the dodgy circular saw, or the dodgy blade on the circular saw. So we're progressing quite nicely. I'll do another video showing more of this, but this was a lot of footage really taken in, which obviously has been sped up, but it's just there to show you where we were at, or how I've marked it out and how I've set out doing it. And I'll see you on the next video for more of this brick paving.